TAC Funding and Programming, April 20th. Call the meeting to order at 1 o'clock. First item is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any adjustments or changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the March 16th minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll need a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, Asheville moves approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Ken. We got a motion. Do we have a second?
Chair, this is Jason from Hennepin County. I'll second.
All right, thank you, Jason. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those that approve, vote by roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Jerry Oj.
This is Nick Dodd for Jerry.
Okay, thank you. Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Jenna Fabish. Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAB Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Hinniker.
Sitting in for him for a little bit, I'll abstain because I wasn't the voting member then.
Thank you. Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent Ao. MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian, Mackenzie Turner Bargain.
Yes, sorry, I just joined. So
DNR, Nancy Spooner Walsh. Suburban Transit, Vicki Laurer.
Heidi Scholl will be filling in for Vicky.
Thank you. Bloomington, Carl Keel. Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Robert Ellis. Ridley, Jim Kozlucher. Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis, Nathan Koster.
White filling in for Nathan Koster.
Thank you. And
Aye.
St. Paul, Ann Weber.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair, that completes the roll.
Okay, thank you. With that, the minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to public comment on committee business. I'll refer this to staff. Staff, did we have anyone from the public that has comment or wishes to speak?
We have not received any requests for comment.
All right, one of these days we will, and we're all going to be shocked. So we'll just wait until that day. Next item is tab report. Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. Pull it up here. So tab met yesterday afternoon. Chair Hovland welcomed Glenn Johnson, who's officially a tab representative. He previously was serving as an alternate. Hovland reported that the tab executive committee had met prior and they had discussions on the items on the agenda. Plus also discussed an item that will be coming forward to the committees and TAB for action regarding shifting of program years for projects that are tied to larger projects. And these projects are specifically related to Highway 252, which there are 4 projects, and the Blue Line. There are 3 projects tied to that. One of them is asking to do another extension, and these are going to be second time or third time requests coming forward. So TAB has also recommended that possibly looking at the program year policy and seeing if it needs to be updated to specifically mention any exceptions to the rule, which these 2 projects types are, because they're asking for extensions or shifting of funds based on outside of their responsibility. So then there are also MnDOT report. Michael Barnes reported that MnDOT is moving into construction season and reported that in 2023 through April 16th, there were 57 traffic related deaths on Minnesota roadways. This is 26% less than last year and 20% less than previous 5 years. He also announced Towards Zero Deaths workshop that will be held on May 9th. And the information on the workshop can be found online, and the registration deadline is April 25th. For MPCA, Todd Bewan provided an update on the VW program. As background, Minnesota received $47 million to offset emissions. They have completed 2 phases of the 7-year program. Phase 3 is starting and will go through 2027. MPCA is also applying for a $3 million planning grant from the Inflation Reduction Act, and the work that they will be covering in this will cover all municipalities for assistance. Metropolitan Airports Commission report. Carl Crimmins reported that boardings were 43,000 on May 30th, and there's a 10% increase in seats. Airlines are using larger planes. There are 224 routes this summer compared to 177 last year. The Metropolitan Council report, Deb Barber reported that the FTA awarded the full funding grant agreement for the Gold Line BRT. The B Line construction contract is signed and construction will begin April or spring of 2023 with opening in 2024. And the council also held several listening sessions for the transportation policy plan. For the Suburban Transit Association, Gary Hansen reported that motor vehicle sales tax receipts are underperforming and transit providers are making adjustments accordingly. The MBTA demo project has wrapped up and results showed lower maintenance cost for the vehicle. MBTA ridership is increasing and is currently at 60%. Maple Grove Express ridership is growing and they are exploring microtransit now. And Southwest Transit is preparing for the summer service and younger riders with summer concerts. For business items, TAB approved 2 streamlined tip amendments, which covered 6 projects. 3 projects had some scope changes. MnDOT cost increases for 3 purchases of its vehicles for enhanced mobility for seniors. A scope change removing drainage and adding transportation management systems, and Southwest Transit a cost increase for electric bus charging station project. All these were not funded by the solicitation. And then 3 projects were added. Dakota County added preliminary engineering for I-35 CSAH 50 interchange. Hennepin County had projects on complete streets on CSAH 3 Lake Street, and Metro Transit, its Blue Line extension full start funding agreement will be added, and the project funding will be moved from 2026, and these are all funded outside the solicitation. We had 3 information items, one on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, discretionary grants presented by Todd Clark-Koski of MnDOT and Jody Martinson of SRF. There was a item on potential changes for the regional solicitation, so staff brought 2 TAB items for discussion. Overall, TAB members seem to be okay with making a few changes and waiting till 2026 evaluation is done. Specifically, they did discuss the criterion weighting and discuss making modest point increase to the safety measures. And acknowledge that additional discussion is needed, and we'll take feedback from the technical committees. For the maximum federal awards, TAB would like the technical committees to review the categories and provide feedback on whether changes are needed regarding inflation of project cost. They acknowledge that changing the maximums will affect the number of projects funded. Breaking ties, TAB was fine using safety as a tiebreaker when determining funding of tied projects. It was also suggested that allowing an applicant with 2 projects that are tied to decide which project to fund. And then the BRT rule wasn't specifically discussed. There was one TAB member just said keep everything the same, but overall would lean toward whatever others said. Nobody brought up the BRT rule as a change. And that was all I had for my notes. Joe Barbeau has prepared a PowerPoint that will be discussed at the meeting to go through each of the things that if there's something I missed here. And then there was a information item on the 2050 transportation plan, policy plan goals, and the engagement and next steps. And there were several consultants and Nicole Henniker who presented the item. And that's what I have for report.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Any questions for Elaine? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. Thanks again, Elaine, for that update. Next is business items. We do have a handful of items we want to get through today, so hopefully we can keep a decent pace. The first item is scope change requests for Hennepin County. I'll turn that over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a scope change request from Hennepin County for its CSAH 153 or Lowry Avenue reconstruction. So this change is removing some improvements at the Minnesota 65 or Central Avenue Northeast intersection of the project, of the reconstruction project. These improvements will be completed by Metro Transit when it constructs its F-line arterial bus rapid transit project. And this change would enable the intersection improvement to be addressed as one project rather than 2. So this isn't, this I should say is sort of in line with some of the scope changes we've had in recent months or even years. This is a $7 million STPBG program funded with $7 million in STPBG program funds in 2023 from the for 2023 in the 2018 regional solicitation, and the award was to fund improvements from Washington Street to Johnson Street, right about, geez, longer than I thought, right here. And everything is going to be done with the project, except that one small piece of it will be done along with that project with Metro Transit. So as we do, when we go through these, we do look at how this change might or might not have impacted the scoring, which of course is impossible to do precisely, but we can take but based on what we know of the scoring process, very little of it, if any, would have changed. There could have been small changes in theory to safety or multimodal, but as I mentioned before, this is going to be done just in a different project by a different sponsor. So with that, we would recommend granting the scope change request. And then of course, there's the funding question, which shows a small decrease in theory of the total project cost based on the original application. Figure that the project elements being removed are about $800,000 as originally applied for, which 80% of, i.e. the federal portion would be about $640,000. And as we've talked about recently, recent history has kind of indicated the ability for applicants to keep that funding. This is a topic that's going to come up when we talk about the scope change policy in the next couple months, but right now that's kind of our recent history and our recent precedent. So with that, I would stand for questions. I'm not sure if anybody from the sponsoring agency or from Metro Transit wishes to talk about it.
Yeah, Hennepin County or sponsor for the project when this component would be complete. Anybody want to speak to this?
This is Jason Stabell from Hennepin County. Nothing further to add, just ready to answer questions if needed.
Okay, thank you, Jason. I will then open it up to committee members for comments, discussion. Okay, I'm not seeing much here, so.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Merrick, Ramsey County. I would move to approve.
All right, thanks, Scott. We got a motion. We have a second.
Colleen Brown from Metro State Aid, seconds.
All right, thank you, Colleen. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll vote by roll call. Staff?
Thank you,
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question of that motion? I want to make sure I'm clear that this would be the keeping the full federal award.
Yeah,
I
my
assume that's what
assumption-
was meant, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
I'm clear on that.
Yeah, my assumption was since there wasn't a deduction that nothing would change with the award, but I can refer back to the motion, or was that the intent?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that was my intent.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, Joe, for double checking on that. So I'll, seeing no further discussion, we'll vote by roll call. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Nick Dobda.
Aye.
Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Jenna Fabish.
This is Gina Midico sitting in for Jenna, who's no longer with Dakota County. But I.
Thank you. Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Henniker.
Steve Peterson as alternate. Aye.
Thank you. Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent Ao.
Hi.
MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian, Mackenzie Turner Bargan.
Aye.
DNR, Nancy Spooner Walsh. Okay. Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
Bloomington, Carl Keel. Okay. Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Robert Ellis. Making sure I didn't miss anyone. Fridley, Jim Kozlucher. Okay. Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis, Katie White. Katie?
Can you hear me? This is Katie White.
Yep. We can hear you.
Oh, good. My internet went out. I had other things to say, but I'll just vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. St. Paul and Weber.
Aye.
Thank you. That completes the roll.
Okay, with that, the item is approved. We will move to the next item. Steve Peterson going over the HSIP program.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to keep you on your toes, Cole's back as the voting member here, so I'll just be presenting this item. This is the first of a series of action items related to with the end result of releasing both the Highway Safety Improvement Program and the Regional Solicitation for public comment. We'll come back then later this summer to TAB and the council for kind of final adoption or approval. But at this point, we're voting to release the new package for public comment. Again, this is a MnDOT-led program, the Highway Safety Improvement Program HSIP. Similar to the solicitation, very few changes. We're sent over from MnDOT on this, knowing that we've got the bigger reevaluation on our heels here starting in August. We did add some bullet points to the action item on some of those changes, and maybe the most important is what's the new deadline with a new schedule here, and the deadline for HSIP applications will be February 1st of next year, approximately 6 weeks after the solicitation. That's kind of the normal sequencing of how we do that. So, and then the rest of it is more minor edits. But I think with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you, knowing we got a full agenda ahead of us here. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Steve. Comments or questions for Steve on this item?
Chair, this is Jason from Hennepin with a question.
Yeah, Jason.
Steve, it might be too early to tell, but do we have any sense for the amount of HSIP funding to be available? I seem to recall that HSIP really benefited from the IIJA.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Good question. HSIP got somewhere on the order of 50% bump. So I'd imagine that 20, maybe we'd be in the ballpark of 50 million plus for 2 years of HSIP, 50 to 60 million probably. We can come back with kind of more with better numbers here. Maybe Aaron even knows the tag online here, but my guess would be somewhere around 50 million, 57 million. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll need a motion to release this for public comment. So we'll need a motion in a second. I'll open it up to the committee.
Mr. Chair, this is Paul Lakeville. Motion would approve.
All right. Thank you, Paul. We got a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Ashfeld, second.
All right, Ashfeld seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Nick Dobda.
Aye.
Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Gina Medico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAP Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Hinneker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent Ao.
Aye.
MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian, Mackenzie Turner Bargan. Okay, Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis, Katie White.
Aye.
St. Paul, Ann Weber.
Aye.
And that completes the roll. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Bethany. All right, that item is approved. Now we'll move on and we'll start getting into the regional solicitation items, first being criteria and weighting. Steve and Joe.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll go through, I think we have six actions from now until the end of this. And we'll go through each of those and talk a bit about what Tab talked about yesterday and provide some reminders of what's actually on the action transmittal to make sure people are clear on what they're voting for or if they would need to make a change. So we're starting with the criteria and weighting, which isn't necessarily a lot of points. This is going to be tricky. I'm sorry. I want to get to some of the attachments here. So, so there's a modest 100-point increase was talked about, I believe, at our last meeting, and I'm sorry, a modest 100-point increase to safety was discussed at our last meeting, and we had talked about maybe a larger increase. So we brought to funding, I'm sorry, to TAC, also a possible 300-point increase. And both TAC and TAB felt pretty secure that maybe 100 points is a better way to go, because 300 points was kind of a drastic change, and it was really sort of slapping points on it. People were nervous about doing that in large measure. Yesterday at TAB, there was a little bit of interest in having no change because we're going to be looking at this in a bigger way in a few years. So we do still need a little bit of feedback on how to distribute the 100 points in the roadways. And we also want some feedback on whether to exclude doing any safety criteria weighting in the transit categories, because we did have a transit work group meeting that suggested not having any increases. So with that, unless Steve or Elaine has anything they'd like to fill in, I would be here for questions. And we do have tables showing how some of those changes would impact each of the scoring, each of the criteria, sorry.
All right, thank you, Joe. Steve, anything to add before we go to discussion?
No, thank you.
All right, comments, questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Angie.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. I would like to explore or discuss the idea that was brought up at TAC of distributing the safety points in relationship to the existing percentages within the safety measure. I'm looking closer at that in our existing percentages that would have assigned more points to the benefit cost measure, which is directly kind of feeds into the performance measure item related to safety. So I do think that is something that is a good idea and that I'd be supportive of, and I'd like to hear discussion if that makes sense to others as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I would clarify there that I'm pointing to how it's written now. So in case there's confusion, right now it's written with the 50-50.
Yeah.
So
And,
go ahead.
Yeah. And Joe, maybe you can scroll to the attachment 1A roadway measures safety to show how you're assigning the points. So I think Angie's comment is, instead of just going 50-50, make sure it's weighted based on the current scoring. And I fully understand that comment. I think Lyndon made that comment at the TAC meeting, and that makes sense because it's quantitative is much easier to score, and pedestrian is more qualitative. So instead of just going 50-50, kind of follow what we already have, just assign more points at that ratio. Angie, is that capturing what you're getting at?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, to clarify, it would be these three middle ones. So Bridges doesn't have any of these categories. And I guess you can talk about traffic management technologies, but that's a slightly different scoring. It doesn't have this proactive pedestrian crash. It's got the safety issues in project area, which we're showing as 50 points, and crashes reduced, which is the same measures. So that's a slightly different topic. That can be brought up as well. I just want to clarify because I had been highlighting the second bullet here, but the first bullet may or may not apply. I don't want to speak for Angie's comment on that.
Okay. Comments on that? People like the idea of doing the 50-50, which would put more weight on pedestrians, or adding the points based on the current ratio, which I think was Lyndon's comment at the TAC meeting. I guess we'll need some clarification from the group here on which way we want to go with that for a recommendation.
Chair, this is Maddie Dahlheimer at Washington County.
Yeah.
I think that approach sounds fine from our perspective to keep that split. I think I think in the spirit of like adding this 100 points to safety in this interim, I think that feels appropriate to keep the proportions. If the proportions between the scoring if there's a desire to change that proportion, the larger update to regional solicitation seems like a more appropriate time to dig into that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for that comment.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Merrick, Ramsey County. I would also support Angie's suggestion. I think this always comes back to me to the origins of this whole safety conversation, which was that we have not been meeting our serious injury and fatal crash reduction targets in the region for 5 years running. And so the best way to make meaningful change to that is to apply the points to the crash reduction factors, which are the ones that are shown there. I mean, that doesn't mean that there aren't other things that can contribute to that, but I think the most direct way to measure that is the crash reduction measures that Angie was speaking to. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Scott. Appreciate those comments. Okay, so the general feel I'm getting is let's use the current proportions when we're adding those points, Joe. And then also, do we need to make, so I know TAC was kind of the 100-point addition was the consensus. Do we need to kind of confirm that, or say, do we want to go 300-point? Are you looking for some more direction on that?
Yes, I think we would want, so the motion is pretty thin. It just says that we're approving the weighting and criteria for the 2024 solicitation. And so I would think we'd want to make a point in the discussion on how much, on whether to add 100 points, if that's where you're going. I don't want to put words in your mouth. B, if you change the approach per what Angie just said, and C, if you're going to change the transit to having no increase, which has been talked about quite a bit.
And Joe, remind me, the transit group recommended not making an adjustment or not increasing it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that was based on sort of the differences in safety in the, particularly in the solicitation and transit versus what the real impetus of this, which was a lot more crash related than what transit's really addressing. So I think safety in transit is probably more of a long-term discussion.
Okay. All right, any other thoughts or comments on this area? And I'll just kind of recap what I've heard thus far, but we have more comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Cole. Joe, could you go to page 5? I just wanted to note that the transit group were generally opposed to adding points, but I think, we've heard from TAB and TAC and F&P that there's an interest in adding points to all the categories. I think their recommendation was if we add points to transit expansion, it should be more focused on usage because, you know, the best safety thing you can do is take people off of the roads, put them in a safer mode like transit. So I think their recommendation was to put 75 points into the usage category and 25 into multimodal elements for transit expansion. Transit modernization that's the right place to put it. But so I would appreciate the group entertaining that change as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Maddie Dahlheimer at Washington County.
Yeah.
So I'll just, I should think about what I'm going to say before I jump in here. I would point back to Scott's reminder to the group of like how this safety discussion has started in moving the scale on those serious and fatal crashes. So I guess I'm inclined, I do not sit on that transit committee, but I would be inclined to follow their recommendation. Do not change the points on this one, as that shouldn't impact the selection within that category itself. And again, just point to the, you know, if we need to make changes with the larger revamp, do it at that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maddie. Cole, your hand is back up.
No, sorry.
Okay.
It's down now.
Okay. All right, so if there's no further discussion, we'll need a motion, and I think what we're looking for is, you know, is it 100 points? Is it 300? I think generally most people are at 100 points, at least what we heard from TAC. Keeping the safety, the ratios between roadway and PEDs as is instead of doing a 50-50 split. And then the whole transit point issue, which sounds like there's some different preferences on that. So we'll need a motion and a second unless there's further discussion.
Mr. Chair, Maddie Dahlheimer again, Washington County. I can attempt to make a motion if I can remember all the categories here.
Yeah, I can help you. I can help you too if you need it. So.
Yeah, I would motion to proceed with the 100-point adjustment to the next regional solicitation, applying those points proportionately to how they are split out now, and applying that 100 extra points to all categories except for transit.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, Scott Merrick, Ramsey County, I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make another motion clarifying question.
Yeah.
I'm pretty clear that we are looking at spot mobility, strategic capacity, and roadway reconstruction modernization for that adjustment to the way that we score the safety in roadways, or the proportions, I should say. Now, for traffic management technologies, it is slightly different, and we have the entire measure. I'm going to show you the entire measure because it's very short. It says, discuss how project will improve safety issues in the project area. So it's a really qualitative measure that we have alongside the regular crash measure that we usually use. So I want to clarify whether that is part of the discussion also, or part of the motion to make that one proportionate. I apologize for the clunkiness of that question.
Yeah, no, I think everything would be proportionate.
So all four of these.
Correct. And I'll refer back to the motioner to ensure that's the intent.
Yes, that was the intent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. So motion and a second. Any further discussion? Colt?
Yeah, I would just note, Mr. Chair, I support the motion, but I think we should just send the comments that if TAC or TAB chooses to add points to transit, that we would like it split. the 75-25 that I proposed for transit expansion, if everyone agrees. I don't know that we need to even make that part of the motion, but I get the sense that TAB might want to add points into this, so I think we should give them clear direction if possible.
Yeah, I would suggest, yeah, we kind of leave it as is, and you and staff, I mean, if TAB wants to move that direction, I assume you guys could make that clear to them on the best way to approach it. But I think at our committee, we'll just kind of go with the motion and the transit planning technical work group preference. But yeah, I agree. TAB may want everything equal across the board, even though it doesn't really affect, getting more projects into transit versus roads. But I think a summary that can be captured, from our discussion today. Thank you, Cole. All right, roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Nick Dobda.
Aye.
Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Gina Medico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAB Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Henniker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent Ao. MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian, Mackenzie Turner Bargan.
Aye.
Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis, Katie White.
Aye.
St. Paul, Ann Weber.
Aye.
That completes the roll.
Mr. Chair would say hi. I was muted
Okay.
when my name was called, yes.
And you're a yes vote, Innocent?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Bethany can record that. Thank you, Innocent.
Thank
All right,
you.
so that item passes. And we will move on to minimum and maximum awards. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. So you've seen this table a few times, and these are our current minimum maximum awards. There hasn't really been any discussion on minimum awards, but maximum awards, there has been some discussion, obviously, since a lot of change has not occurred to these maximum awards in quite some time. So I'll talk a bit about the things Tab talked about yesterday, and I will remind you first that the current action item doesn't show any change. So any changes that you would recommend would have to be part of the motion. So Tab talked about a few things yesterday. There were folks talking about no increases because they wanted to maintain the number of projects being completed, and or because they thought we could put that off until the 2026 solicitation, like we're doing with so many things. Somebody suggested increasing all the maximums by the same proportion, and they came up with 40%. Because we're going to have about a 40% increase over where we were at 2 years ago. Or, I'm sorry, 2 cycles ago. Of course, last cycle we had a really large amount of funding, but we're looking at maybe about a 40% increase over what we're used to prior to that. Another option was to consider increasing, but maybe not to do something across the board. Maybe considering how recently categories were increased and whether or not there's demand for the maximum awards. How often people are actually applying for those, and we have a little bit of information on that I'll share in a second. And then one option was a little more specific to increase by categories that haven't been increased in some time: bridges, reconstruction and modernization, and safe routes to school. Due to the safe routes, due to the demand for trails and bridges. I'm sorry, safe routes due to the low cost and maybe keeping that up with pedestrian 2 years ago, leaving trails alone because there's a large demand for that category. And so that has not been increased since 2014. And then also bridges and roadway construction and modernization, because there's been a lot of inflation in that category. So those are some of the options that were discussed yesterday. And I'll show here a table that shows when the last, where the maximums are at now and when they were changed to this amount. You might notice in this top row, system management, traffic management technologies actually went down from 7 million to 3.5 million. Also, it's a lot of information, but on this table here, we do try to provide some history and nuance on maybe what things that might contribute to some of the thoughts. For example, I was surprised by this, but we only had one application out of the 5 for bridges that even applied for the maximum. And we also have some other history, like I mentioned, traffic management technologies going from 7 million to 3.5 million because there just wasn't demand for that size of projects. So with that, we'd stand for questions.
Right, questions for staff? Right, seeing none, any discussion, comments on how we should approach this? As Joe said, if we approve as is, nothing changes. So if we want to make a change, it needs to be in the motion.
Yeah, Michael, this is Katie White, City of Minneapolis.
Yeah, Katie.
Yeah, we would support raising the maximum for some of these categories, sort of like where Joe was showing that spreadsheet that he has up right now. Looking at raising the roadway reconstruction and modernization, bridge, multi-use trails, and safe routes. I think I'm reading this right. The other categories have been touched since 2014 and those have not, but correct me if I'm wrong. So that's something that we would be interested in doing. I don't know that I have a dollar value off the top of my head, but those are the categories that I think we would like to target. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Janoyak from Metro Transit. Can I make a comment?
Yes.
One thing that kind of threads through all of these categories, regardless of mode, is inflation. So we would support some sort of inflation factor being applied throughout the categories evenly.
Okay, when you say inflation factor starting like from the 2020 max or the 2022 max, I mean, the further you go back with inflation, obviously the maximums go up.
Yep. Yeah.
So any thoughts on where you land on the inflationary adjustment?
No further thoughts to the detail of, what that baseline would be throughout the categories. I guess my starting point would be to just consider the 2022 cycle, considering that's what the dollar amounts were in the most recent past.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Mr. Chair, Maddie Dahlheimer, Washington County.
Yeah.
I will just jump in to say I would agree with Scott's comments about adding inflation is hitting all of these categories. So, if we're going to account for inflation in one category, I think account for that in all of them. To provide some additional value. I think per the first comment, if we want to look a little bit closer at those that haven't been updated since 2014, maybe there's some additional info from this table that staff put together that can help those catch up to those items that were updated in 2020.
All right, thank you, Maddie.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Merrick, Ramsey County. I think I have maybe a slightly different opinion than the comments that have been made so far. It sort of feels to me that we're shooting from the hip here a little bit. With not to say that any of the comments are necessarily bad, but it feels to me, since we have the regional solicitation reevaluation coming up, that there could be perhaps a little more research and strategic thought put into how we're approaching increasing the maximums if we are planning to do that, instead of just coming up with arbitrary thoughts on what should or shouldn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Right. Any other comments or discussion? And Katie, going back to your first comment, you had mentioned the ones that hadn't been updated: reconstruction, modernization, bridge, safe routes. And did you say you didn't have ideas on what the numbers should be? Or did you? Sorry, I missed that.
No, I don't have a proposal today. I think, all of these, I mean, this is due in part to inflationary pressures, as I think Maddie was mentioning earlier. I think that our reconstruction projects get the lowest share of our funding through federal sources compared to the total project cost of what it actually means to deliver these projects. So I think that one would see a lot of benefit to local units of government for seeing an increase there, especially. Safe routes doesn't need to be on the same scale, as reconstruction or modernization, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I guess since I'll open it up. Any further comments or discussion here before I maybe summarize where we're at?
Mr. Chair, Maddie Dahlheimer again, Washington County.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in again. I mean, I think if the motion today needs to be specific enough to say we have decided we're going to increase X categories to X amount, then I would certainly kind of maybe walk back my earlier comments to agree with Scott that, like, if we need that level of detail out of our motion, then it seems like we need more thought put into that rather than just kind of picking numbers or percentages out of the sky. So I think if that's the level of detail that the motion would need to be today, then I would likely be more in support of looking into those increases as part of the broader evaluation.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you summarized what I was going to say. I don't think anybody has specifics on how they want to adjust specific categories or by how much. And I think what everybody can agree on is there has been inflation. Maybe that's something to do. And then if we're making big adjustments in the millions of dollars for categories, maybe that is best served to the 2026 solicitation process and all the due diligence that will go into that. So what I'm gathering is that there's some support for making an inflationary adjustment across all categories. Is something that we could probably agree on today. And what I heard from, I think, one member that, make those inflationary adjustments in the green based on the last solicitation. So you are, bumping these up by the inflationary adjustment for a couple years. So that's what I'm hearing. So we do need a motion and a second from somebody on this item.
Mr. Chair, this is Cole at council.
Yeah.
Just to give the counterpoint, I think these numbers are often pretty arbitrary. I think we can pick a number, and I'm not saying we need to, but I think it's as easy, you could say raise all the categories that haven't been raised since 2014 by $1 million each. None of these are going to be perfect solutions, and we're going to fight over the number until the end of time. Even when we do the regional solicitation evaluation, we're going to spend a lot of time fighting over the right number. So I'm just saying, if we want to actually address this issue this cycle, there's a pretty easy solutions. Just pick a number and put out a motion. So I'm happy to make a motion like that if others would support it, but
yeah,
well, I don't really think we're ever going to get numbers that are going to make everyone happy. So
right. Well, in the discussion, nobody brought forward any specific number that they want it adjusted to. That's why I summarized it. It's probably best to do an inflationary adjustment. So I didn't hear any members say, yeah, we should go from this maximum to this maximum in this category. All I heard was very generalized comments. So it's kind of hard to talk that through when we don't get much in terms of details or justification. But before you make a motion, Cole, what are your thoughts on making an adjustment to a specific category or raising a maximum? We can have that discussion. I just didn't hear any discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say that I think inflation is too dramatic. It'll shift too much money away from spreading the money around to all the projects. So that big of a change is too much. We're really trying to balance here, giving people more money because project costs have gone up, with making sure we have enough money that we fund a lot of projects. And so all of the other categories that have been looked at since 2014, all the other ones that are in the right columns on this sheet, leave those as is. They've been discussed more recently. So just address the column on the far left in the yellow and give all of those 1 million more to start down the process of helping with inflation. That would be my proposal.
Okay, thanks for the thoughts. So let's talk this out a little more, because I've heard a few counterpoints to that. So I'll open it back up to the group.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
This is Paul, Lakeville. I would tend to agree with Cole's comments. And Joe, maybe remind me, we used to add in inflation into the projects after award. And I can't remember when that was taken out, but I know we used to do that at one time, and I think it was done after the projects were awarded based upon that. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So in 2014, we were adding a 2% per year inflation adjustment, which would be added different percentages to different projects based on what year they were being programmed for, and this would bump that up from like 7.42 million to 7.84 million, depending on which year it was programmed in. And then in 2016, we discontinued it because I think for the purpose, somebody else can fill in if they remember better, but I believe for the purpose of being able to fund more projects. I'm going to sneak in some commentary as a staff member that I would hope we don't bring this practice back, because it was really confusing as opposed to just coming up with a flat number, but that's just my 2 cents. So we haven't done math that would kind of go from these amounts. We're working from 7 million. You could argue we should be working from 7.5 million or something if you're looking at the 2014 numbers. But we did stop that, I'm almost certain, after 2014.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. So I'm okay with inflation, but I mean, I'm not really. It's not really concerned for me. I mean, from my perspective, if we want to focus on the 2014 adjustments potentially, I think from a regional perspective, reconstruction modernization probably to a certain amount. The bridge category is something, I don't know, Joe, maybe you can help us out with that, but what is the average award on a bridge? I mean, we don't really, that project, we only fund a couple projects out of that category anyways. And then also my last comment is the multi-trail and bicycle. the 5.5 million. That in 2014, that was increased substantially is my recollection, from like $1 million or to 2 million, or from 1 million or 2 million to 5.5 million. So there was a pretty significant jump in 2014 that took place. So and that category is, you know, is looked at by locals heavily, and that's the category that we receive the most interest in. So I'd be hesitant to raise that category anymore, just because, you know, to try to get as many projects funded in that category as possible. Thank you.
Well, Chair, I can add on to that a little bit also. Just this, since the award was, or the amount was set at 5.5 million, the technical committees have tried to reduce that to 3.5 and voted on that several times. I think in 2016, 2018, and TAB left it at 5.5 million. So if, I don't know if any of the other members remember that, trying to reduce it, and TAB leaving it at 5.5. So I'm not sure if the technical committee members would be interested in raising that 5.5 million.
Yeah, and Elaine, that's my recollection too, that at that time, you know, that 3.5 million discussion, try to reduce it to 3.5 was to get more projects into that category, or more projects funded. But you know, 5.5 seems reasonable at this point to leave it at that number.
Okay, thanks for that background, Elaine.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Merrick, Ramsey County. I'm going to move to table this item until the 2026 regional solicitation.
Okay, so we got a motion to basically table or leave the min and maxes how they are, so they'd be the same as the 2022 solicitation. Do we have a second?
Dahlheimer, Washington County, second.
I want to double check if if you make a motion to table it, then it sits on the table and doesn't go forward. So are you sure that's the motion you want, or do you want to make a motion that the maximum minimums don't change?
Yeah, so yeah, Robert's rules, yeah. So Scott, you would just be making a motion that the amounts would be the same as the last solicitation, so the 2022 solicitation. So it is an action item instead of tabling it or taking this back.
Yeah, thank you for that procedural clarification there, Elaine and Chair. So yeah, my motion is that we should keep the maximums the same and revisit for the 2026 regional solicitation.
Okay. And the seconder agrees with that, I would assume.
Yep, Dahlheimer still seconds.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion?
I just have a comment that for the looking forward into the next evaluation, we can look at the past several cycles instead. I mean, when Joe put this information together, it was just looking at what was applied for in the last solicitation. So we can do a full analysis for all this, you know, each year, and then the amounts that were requested and awarded, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none.
This is Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just as we've been reviewing these tables, it's very difficult to kind of provide a recommendation. It's almost like each category needs its own adjustment. And I just think we're in too much of a time crunch to get good consensus on that.
Thank you, Jason. So good. So it sounds like you're going to vote yes for this one. So, all right, we will move to roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Nick Dobda.
Aye.
Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Gina Medico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAB Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Henniker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent AO.
Aye.
MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian, Mackenzie Turner Bargan.
Aye.
Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis, Katie White.
Aye. Aye.
St. Paul, Ann Weber.
Okay, so that motion passes, or that item is approved. Next, we'll move on to mode splits. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. This is a simple slide that doesn't have to be on there for very long. This is the funding ranges by mode. It hasn't been discussed at all. It wasn't discussed at TAB yesterday. I haven't heard a lot of activity to change it, but we haven't also talked about it a lot. So I will take that off of the screen and point to the language of no, I don't see the language. Well, in any case, I'll point to this. This is the ranges that we have used for the last several years and several cycles. I'll point out, because I'm sure it might come up, that we did go above, I believe, this 20% for pedestrian or bike and ped last time. That wasn't actually against the rules of the solicitation. It does allow for TAB to make decisions like that if wanted to be. So anyway, this is the non-changing midpoints from last time, and with that, we'd stand for questions on the process.
All right, thank you, Joe. Comments, questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, Committee. My question, and it's really a request to clarify if the ranges, when they're calculated as part of future items, will include, and how it will include the new funding sources with the carbon reduction, the bridge, and the protect funding, if those will be separated or if they'll be included in the ranges. Thanks.
Yeah, Joe, should I take this one?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. It's really a great question. So we've got 3 new funding sources. On system bridge, which we had last time. MnDOT is not assuming that will continue at this point. It was a transfer from the general fund, and so on their estimation, they're not assuming that will continue right now. So that's kind of the bridge, kind of saying that money we're not accounting for at the moment. If it comes later, great. The protect, a new source for this solicitation is going to be in the order of maybe $3.5 million a year. That comes to the MPO. I would say that's probably included in this range, although we haven't talked about it, admittedly. So I guess I shouldn't say that. Protect is going to be put into this solicitation. Whether that's accounted for or not, I think we maybe need some more discussion, but it's a small amount. It's going to be $7 million out of 250. Then the last one, carbon reduction program, not in the solicitation, but more discussion is needed. And both protect and carbon reduction, especially carbon reduction, is going to be discussed by TAB and the council as part of the solicitation evaluation starting in August. And that had kind of a funny relationship, as you may remember, with our process. We kind of funded it with projects with carbon reduction after the fact, because it went to the council versus kind of through tab as much. So I would say carbon reduction for sure, not in here. On street or on system bridge, not in this. Protect, unsure. Long-winded answer, but it's complicated, so I just tried to like slowly go through it.
Okay, thank you. I think the main thing is to, or when the solicitation kind of does move ahead, is to clarify that for everyone, kind of just in the beginning. Thanks.
Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll give some a little bit historical. Prior to 2014, we had funding applications by source of funds. When we redid the solicitation, the idea was put all the funding in one bucket and then have applications so that they could select the best projects for the region and then give them the funding they had or that they were eligible for. And at that time, there was 3 sources of funding. It was the STP, the CMAC, and then TAP, the transportation enhancements. That name changed several times, and that was eventually merged in with the STP funds. So the idea was select the projects, give them a funding that's eligible. And this last round, there was the bridge funding was done differently, so it was hard to put it into the pot, and that's same with the carbon reduction funding. So I think going into the reason of putting it into the next evaluation is to discuss how we can use funds that don't fit into that basket of bucket of funds. And how do you determine, does it change the percentage of the spread of the modal ranges? So that caught us off guard because typically we've been able to just put the money in and it didn't matter because we just gave it to where it was able to get funding. So that, and now not knowing what will happen with the next transportation bill, if whole new pot set some money come in or not, or that is going to be a discussion that probably might have to every solicitation if we find out that there's different money.
Okay, thank you for that background, Elaine. All right, other discussion, thoughts, motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Innocent.
Yes, I just have a comment. Looking at the ranges here, just bringing up the implementation of the statewide multimodal transmission plan that MnDOT just adopted, I believe, in December. There's an assumption in the way for us to try to reduce greenhouse gas emission and meet the goals that we set up in 20 or some of the current one in the climate action framework. There's some assumption about having at least about 65% of EV car being sold, or 100% of registration, and about 14% per capita of reduction in greenhouse gas. And we have to be very effective in at least trying to reach those targets. But also there are other strategies that we need to include to be able to meet those, and including probably working on coordinating with local government in terms of land use policies and parking policies, stuff like that. Then, but what I'm looking at here, we still have for roadways about 46% to 65%, and only 25 to possibly 35 for transit and TDM, and 9% to maybe about 20% for bicycle and pedestrian. If we have those expectations and higher assumption that we're making, if we don't make some adjustment on some of these percentage that we have here for the mode splits or investment, I think it might be difficult for us to bring out or to reach those goals that we set up and the implementation of the long range plans that we have at MnDOT, or maybe the one that Med Council is planning for 2050 also.
Okay. Thank you, Innocent, for those comments. Yes, great point about meeting certain goals for emission reductions. And maybe I'll ask staff, as part, when I was at the TAB meeting, there was some discussion about, where is transit going in the future? COVID impacted a lot of how we look at transit. And so I assume there's some exploration and, over the next 20 years, how has transit path changed? And, making assumptions with gas-powered vehicles to electric-powered vehicles. So, Steve, you got any comments on that?
Yeah, we heard a lot at the TAB meeting, and particularly with the state legislature ending around the same time as TAB's going to be asked to send this out for public comment, and people argue kind of every side of what that might mean to these modal funding ranges. But I think a lot of this I think is going to be, we're going to be starting it up in August with the evaluation. It's a complicated topic to really dig into, and that's why we hadn't broached it to date, but did want to give TAB the opportunity to say this is something you can change if you want to. And that's why we put it as a specific action item, because it is under their purview to change that. But I'd say at the technical committees right now, we didn't discuss it. So I think it's almost a pass through to TAB, and if they want to touch it, they can, but likely not. Elaine, I agree with that.
Just as you mentioned, TAB did briefly discuss that, but wanted to get a report from the legislature.
Yeah.
It should be in its final week, if not completed by the next TAB meeting. And they wanted to have someone come in and discuss all the different funding that has been approved going forward for transit or even roadways, so that they have an idea of what the solicitation could assist with or how it can be used compared to those.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I remember that comment. I forget which TAB member, but I mean, trying to base our solicitation on what the legislature does every year. I mean, you have people changing. I mean, it's such a fluid process. It's like, maybe we should drive our own process and not depend on what the legislature does each year with funding, because you're never going to know. But my personal thoughts aside here. Innocent, did you have anything else to add?
Yes, I bring up legislature. They're passing a lot of bills that will probably force MPCA to help in reducing a lot of not only greenhouse gas or issues with climate change impacts, but generally on NOx, toxic, PM 2.5, especially problems in the environmental justice areas, which most of those areas have not met the state standards or federal standard that other areas are enjoying the state. So they're passing a lot of bills that will force us to try to come up with different strategies to help improve air qualities in those areas. So yeah, there are a lot of mandates, but we have to work with Med Council, counties, cities, and MnDOT to help to come up with some other strategy that will help us to meet the mandate that our legislature or the new bills that are passing, asking us to be able to reduce emissions on those areas.
Thank you, Innocent, for those thoughts. Yeah, when you have one party government, you get a lot more rules and mandates. So I know the legislature has been very busy with a lot of various items. So I'm sure there will be a lot coming out of this session for us to all react to.
Yeah, more are coming.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts or emotion on this item?
Mr. Chair, this is Gina Medico from Dakota County. I just have a question for staff, if I can clarify.
Yeah.
Thanks. And maybe you explained this when you said that this will not, the midpoints do not consider the additional funding we get from the other new programs like carbon reduction. Is that what you said, Steve?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so this is just sort of the base amount. Do you know where we ended up in the last solicitation for the various categories on the midpoints? And, you know, I feel like there was a lot of change in that one, maybe primarily because of the new funding sources. So I was just kind of curious how, you know, I know ultimately this is a policy decision, so it's, you know, I think it's really up to TAB, but I was just curious how the last solicitation shook out.
Yeah, I'd probably look to Joe or Bethany maybe to answer that one. The answer depends on if you include carbon reduction or not, because that was when you added up a bunch of years, that did add up to something. I believe, Joe, with the normal CMAQ and STP money, we went just slightly above on the bike ped range that's shown here.
I think, go ahead.
Right.
That's my memory, and I think it might have even been because of the decision to not break that tie.
Okay.
That we had to add about 5 or easily even 7 million of highway. I'm sorry, bike ped. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah. So the other two modes ended in their range. You may remember some of the, because we funded 18 out of the 20 transit projects. We did shift some of the transit money to bike ped. So they were a little bit less than the midpoint shown there, but to the advantage of bike ped. So.
Gina, does that answer your question? So it sounds like the bike and ped was at the top range and the others kind of fell within, is generally where the last solicitation fell.
Yeah, thanks. That is helpful. I think when we are thinking about it and we're looking at what projects get funded, you know, I think what people look at is ultimately what got funded rather than like what funding source it came from. And so I just wonder if the new funding sources are available and only certain projects are eligible for them, if that should change the way we think about the midpoints. But again, I think that's probably a policy discussion.
Okay, thank you for those thoughts, Gina. All right, I know there's somebody out there ready to make a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is Cole. I'll move to keep the funding ranges the same as 2022.
All right, thank you, Cole. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Paul Lakeville. I'd second that.
Okay, Omi seconds. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Nick Dobda.
Aye.
Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Gina Medico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Madeline Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAB Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Henniker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent Ao.
I would vote aye for now, hoping that TAP would probably look at it and make some changes.
Thank you, Innocent. Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
MnDOT Bike and Pedestrian, Mackenzie Turner Bargan.
Aye.
Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis, Katie White.
Aye.
St. Paul, Ann Weber.
Aye.
That completes the roll.
All right, thank you, Bethany. That item is approved. Next, we'll move over to policies, qualifying criteria and eligibility. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. So lots of stuff here. This is sort of where a lot of our little changes and potential changes have landed. So I'll get into a little bit of what Tab did or didn't talk about yesterday, and also what is shown in the attached language. So one of the things we've been talking about for the last couple of rounds is breaking ties. I think this was kind of the impetus for this was kind of when we had to fund more project, or we had to dip into an extra year of CRP because of a tie that was there was no willingness to break. We had to fund both projects. So there's discussion of whether or not we can break ties and have more flexibility. Tab discussion lent itself towards funding or giving a tie, breaking a tie towards the project that scores higher in safety. And you'll see how we handle that category by category in the attachment that we provided. The only, and that would be what's actually in the measure. I'm sorry, geez, I keep doing that, sorry. What it would actually be applied in the motion. The only change, the only new input brought by Tab yesterday was that somebody suggested under the scenario where within the same category, there's a tie between two projects from the same sponsor, that the sponsor could pick which one is ranked higher. Nobody really disputed that. The next issue is the bus rapid transit minimum. This slide here might look familiar to you as something we talked about in recent months. That was not really discussed. That was a jam-packed meeting yesterday. Tab didn't discuss it. The attachment shows no change, so if any change is to be made, it would have to be part of the motion regarding this issue. Next is an item that didn't get talked about, and it didn't get properly tracked in the attached language. If you happen to go all the way and read into the depths of the policies qualifying language, and that is adding bike pedestrian elements of other projects to the statement that had been attached only to multi-use trails and bicycle facilities, confirming that snow and ice removal will occur for year-round use. And finally, this is an issue, and Elaine, you might fill in if I don't get this correct. Somebody had approached us about can we, if we have a roadway project with an adjacent bike ped trail, can we apply also just for the trail in the trail category? Generally speaking, we don't want people applying for the same project for the same project from category to category and just rolling the dice or on all categories and hopefully to get funded in one. But these are not identical projects, so it is a bit of a gray area. The language does use the phrase project elements. So again, nothing changing any rules is there. I think we would just tweak language if depending on whether a motion is made to allow for somebody to do that kind of a thing with their bike ped elements from their roadway application. So that was a lot. The only really big discussion we had yesterday was on the tiebreakers. And with that, we would stand for questions.
All right, thanks, Joe. Questions for staff?
I think Tab would like some feedback on the last point. And with that, an example that was given, it was a roadway project that's been submitted. It hasn't been funded, but it does have a bike trail on it. And could they apply for the bike trail? And then where do you then draw the line for other elements? Is it only in this type of instance, or does it open it up for this rule, I guess I'll call it, being used multiple different ways?
Mr. Chair, and also for Joe, this is Ken.
Yep.
On that last bullet point, does does the question evolve around the issue of if an applicant was submitting a roadway project that they would normally put a trail on, but they submit it as without a trail, since we have excuse me, since we have maximum participation, and then submit under the trail project or the trail category, the trail that would normally go along the road. And if both got funded and the roadway project priority stood on its own and the trail priority stood on its own and then got combined, was that the question, or am I misreading that?
So currently they could do that. What is happening with this example is they apply for the roadway project with the trail in it. This would give them the multimodal points. And they're asking if they could also apply for the trail as a separate project with only the trail. And then that's where it would go against the rule where you cannot apply some project elements in more than one category. So they are submitting it now with the trail included, getting them multimodal points, but the roadway is not getting funded. So I'm guessing that they want to still continue to submit the roadway project, hoping it gets funded. If the trail gets funded, they would probably just say no, but they're asking, can they also apply for the trail with this hope that even if part of it got funded. Now, if it was selected, the next time they applied for the roadway, they could not use the trail and would lose any multimodal points with that. So right now, currently, we say you can't have the same elements in different projects.
Well, yeah, no, so if they're applying for a trail category as a standalone project, but in the same solicitation year, they're also applying for the road project, but taking credit for the trail, and that seems a little, it doesn't seem like a good approach. You know, if they're looked at as two standalone projects, there's a conflict there. And I think that's what the clarification you're looking for, correct, Colleen or Eileen?
No, right now they could apply as two standalone projects.
Right.
But what they are asking is, can they apply for the roadway with the trail in it? And hopefully get it all funded in one project. But since it hasn't scored well enough to get funded, can they also apply for just the trail and hopefully get the trail funded? And right now they can't do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Maddie Dahlheimer, Washington County.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like it could potentially cause more problems than it would solve. I mean, if they're accounting for to keep using this example, if someone is accounting for a trail as part of a road project and apply for a trail, what happens if they receive funding in both categories? Then they're getting double funding for this trail. Like, then what do you do with that money, right? Because the project costs in the roadway project would have to include the cost for the trail to get the points for the multimodal. So then they're getting double funding.
Well, we wouldn't fund a trail project. But it opens up many of our, I was gonna say, it's gonna open up many of our roadway projects that have trails on them to now submit more trail projects too. It wouldn't be just this applicant, it would potentially open up for lots of them.
Maddie, do you have any other questions or comments on that before I move to Gina?
No, that's fine. You can move on.
All right, Gina.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. You know, I feel like I should speak to this one because I'm pretty sure it's my tab member that is the one that has been requesting this. And this arose out of a situation where we had a roadway reconstruction project with pretty significant multimodal elements, including an underpass and trails. And I think her frustration is that with the carbon reduction funding and the infusion of that, all of the projects got funded in pedestrian facilities. And so I think there was a feeling that if we had pulled those elements out of the roadway project and applied for them as standalone grade separated pedestrian crossing or the trail elements, that that would have been funded. The roadway project ended up being funded, but it was right on the bubble. It was the last project that got funded. And so I think it was just a thought of, well, if we're building these multimodal roadway projects, and they're still not getting funded, but all of the pedestrian projects are getting funded, could we apply for both and just, if one gets funded, that's the one we go with, or if both were to get funded, we would obviously only select the one, whatever project, probably the roadway project, because it would have other elements that would be eligible. But I think it was just in recognition that some of our roadway projects had pretty significant multimodal elements that almost didn't get funded.
Okay. I mean, if there's an agency willing to do 2 applications to try to figure this out, I don't know, what is staff's perspective on this?
I would answer that if all the roadway projects decided to also submit trail projects, we already have 40 some trail projects come in that could double. And then we'd have to go through them and make sure we're not double funding something if they were both selected.
Right.
And this is only if it's allowed for trails and not anything else.
Mr. Chair, this is Cole. Just, I mean, just reacting to all the other decisions we made today, this seems like something that needs to be addressed in the overhaul. This is just too big of a change to me to really figure out how it will work and the implications. I think this should just be one that, to use Scott's term, that we table till 2026.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
Well, I did want to talk about the BRT rule. So,
okay.
Well, this one, no motion is needed if there's no change. I would.
Right, there's nothing in that proposed motion, but.
Okay.
But I would think put it in the notes that when it's brought forward to tab, if it's brought up at tab, the committee discussion, that no recommendation was made to change it.
Yeah, just tell them we're deferring all the hard decisions for the next cycle process. But okay, Cole, you want to talk BRT?
I do have a comment on that item before we move on, if it's all right.
Yeah, let's stay on the item. We can go to Cole after we finish up. Angie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and committee. And please, if I'm not interpreting this correctly, but I actually would argue that that would be allowed under the current rule. Applicants must not submit an application for the same project elements. Those would be different overall projects, even though, yes, there would be one project element that would be the same, but as long as they don't both get funded, I think there are actually examples where this has happened and both applications have been eligible. I know for Carver County, we've done that within the roadway category with 2 applications that are different. One for the spot mobility with just the intersection and one for the capacity with a larger project. And that has been allowed. So I actually see a very similar interpretation here where I do think that would be allowed without any change. So, thanks.
Mr. Chair, I was going to let it go before Angie said that, but I view this as pretty open to interpretation as well. And the reason I was going to let it go is because I don't want to put us in a position where you have to change something regardless. But I saw it as fairly interpretable, although the phrase project elements might tip you towards the direction of it's not allowed. But what we really were trying to do is make sure that I don't take my pedestrian project, put it in bikes, put it in safe routes, put it in pedestrian, put it in one of the transits identically, and then hopefully one of them will get the points. So you can make an argument that that's not the intent of this. I apologize for making this even muddier.
Okay. Well, it sounds like what I'm hearing just kind of leave this as status quo, and we need to have more discussion on it with the overhaul to provide more clarification. We can certainly do that. So why don't we move over to BRT, Cole?
Sure. And I think the discussion is largely focused on the fact that this is too complicated and that we shouldn't make a change to BRT. I just wanted to point out one fault in our process. We just heard about a county perspective on a project that they want funded that got skipped. Well, the applicant that got skipped by the BRT rule is not at the table for this process. Apple Valley applied for a project last cycle. Their project got skipped. And so I guess I'm here representing the applicant that got skipped, and this idea that, they don't have a voice at FMP or TAC or TAB. And so we need to consider the implications of our rules to all of our applicants, not just those that are on FMP. And so I think we should do something to make sure that TAB has flexibility. And one idea might be that we say the BRT rule stays as is unless it involves, shifting money out of transit, which is what happened last time, because we didn't have enough projects to fund. I don't think TAB likes skipping projects if it means, a relatively high-ranking project doesn't get funded and then we move the money to another category. So I don't know if that's a rule that we could easily write, 32 million, unless it involves shifting money out of the modal category because of a lack of projects, something like that.
Elaine?
I just, for last year, MBTA was on the committees, and they actually recommended staying with the BRT rule, even though their project was the one skipped. Because they didn't like the rule. At that time, it was changing mid of a solicitation. And I don't think they were advocating for a change.
So MVTA was not the applicant. Apple Valley was, city of.
Oh,
and they're not on the committees.
Okay.
And Cole, that was a parking ramp? Is that?
It was a skyway on the red line for the 147th Street station.
Okay. Well, we have some other members that represent transit on this committee. Are any thoughts or comments on Cole's approach here or thoughts?
I do like, I was saying, the added if money is going to be shifted out of the modal category. That's a good exception for that BRT rule. And that came up because we had so much money last round. There's going to be less this time.
Chair, this is Jason from Hennepin.
Yeah.
Chair, one thing I've heard a few times is the legislative session and discussion about a metro area sales tax. First question is, do we know if that's still being considered as part of the omnibus transportation bill? And second, if it is, I feel like that new tax, is directly related to bus rapid transit. So it seems maybe a little too early to make an informed decision as we wait for the legislative session to end.
All right, thanks, Jason. Do we have any legislative experts that follow?
I can speak to that, and I was actually going to make this point earlier because I think there was a misconception at TAB. There is a legislative proposal for a sales tax, a portion of which would come to the council for transit, but in a portion of which would also come to the TAB for roadway, bike, and ped projects, or alternative Senate version would go directly to the counties for roadway projects. So I think we have to keep in mind that it's not just a transit tax, it's a transportation tax. And so, to that point, the solicitation is going to need to take into account a lot of that new revenue, not just the transit piece. And so I don't know that we should really be singling out transit's role in that new legislation because there's a lot of elements that influence the regional solicitation.
And this is why TAB didn't discuss this much is because it's the unknown of the funding, and maybe it's waiting till next, in the next solicitation, when you get a full idea of funding that's available, projects that are happening, what other changes are going to be made to the solicitation.
So Cole, I mean, if you were to make a motion, what are you thinking on this item?
Honestly, to give TAB the most flexibility, I would just move option number 1 here on the first bullet, increase the maximum, just so that they have more flexibility.
And then kind of leave it up to them if they want to move it up to that max. Okay.
So it would be up to 45 million, or limiting 45 million.
So the Transit Planning Technical Working Group, did they have a preferred recommendation? I think that was already covered, but Cole, are you aware? Okay. They just put these together as kind of options to consider without much weight to them.
Yeah, and TAB has talked about this. They talked about this last cycle during the scenario evaluations for the funding scenarios. They talked about it a lot more than the technical committees did. So I think in some places the technical committee is a little bit, they don't have as strong of an opinion because TAB's the one who spent a lot of time discussing this rule last cycle, whereas the technical committees did not. So it is a little difficult without TAB's direction, and they haven't given us great direction at this point.
So to get to your point, if the Apple Valley project was funded, then it would have been that second bullet point, the 39 million would have been the kind of the approach there.
The second bullet would have accommodated the Apple Valley project. That would have been adequate. So another option is just to ensure that we raise the amount a little bit in case we get more than one BRT project like we did last cycle.
Okay.
And as for the motion, I mean, the suggested motion, was it to increase it to 45 million or 39 million?
Oh, I don't think there's been a motion.
I was trying to, what Cole had mentioned. He was mentioned second bullet, but I
Oh,
didn't know.
I think, yeah, Cole, you can speak for yourself.
I'm happy to make a motion. I'd be curious if there's a motion others would support, just so I don't waste my time.
Are you thinking about the 39 million or the 45 million?
Let's go with 39 just to be conservative.
And that would allow 2 $7 million projects.
And obviously, I mean, we still have the funding ranges, so it's not like if you do this, you're taking money away from roadways, correct, staff?
Mm-hmm.
So is anybody adamantly opposed if Cole made a motion on the second bullet point here to bump that up to 39 million?
Mr. Chair, I'm not adamantly opposed, but would a motion we want to, I mean, is there anything to talk about, particularly the tie breaking? Or maybe there could be more than one motion that would lead to the result, but I don't.
I think you need to have separate motions.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott, Ramsey County.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily opposed to the motion either. I guess I'm just throwing out for discussion. I believe my understanding and maybe I'm wrong here, but part of the reason for this rule is to sort of have a line of demarcation between what funds are available for BRT versus suburban transit purposes. And so I'm just wondering, do we have any suburban transit representatives that could speak to their view of this on this committee? If not, I guess I would be a little hesitant to make a decision without them having a voice.
I'm on the call. This is Heidi Schultz, Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. I had to step away for a minute, so if I'm filling in blanks, that's why. I'm assuming that you're talking about the BRT, the total amount in the BRT. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. So my understanding is that BRT is not just open to Metro Transit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. So, I mean, historically, suburban transit providers do not submit projects in here. But as long as there's still an option for us to submit in the future, if we ever wanted to start a BRT line, I don't think we have an issue with this. I do think that there is a lot of money going to this, and some of our big challenges, if we're saying we're operating for X amount of years with this money that's awarded, we want to make sure that Metro Transit has the funds to keep it going after that time frame, that the operating dollars are there. Just like we're held accountable for any kind of expansion routes, and we have to take on that operating cost after the initial 3 years of service. We just want to make sure that we're all held to the same expectations.
Okay, so I'm hearing Heidi isn't against it because it is an open playing field, and I think as Cole mentioned, Apple Valley would have gotten a Skyway for their BRT line, or at least in their area over there. So
Yeah, I know. Just clarify that actually the last cycle, none of the applicants were Metro Transit for BRT projects, other than ABRT, which is not being discussed as part of this change. There's no change proposed for the ABRT portion.
Cole, who was all under who was awarded for the BRT last year?
Washington County got a project for Gold Line, and then Apple Valley applied for Red Line, 147th Street Station, and that was the one that was skipped as a result of this rule.
Okay. Which ultimately would have affected Metro Transit. I don't think we have any initial concerns.
Well, Cole, there's your green light for a motion.
Well, I think the question of, are we doing a motion for this whole action item, or do we want to just do a motion amendment sort of thing? I'm not a Robert's Rules guy on that part of this.
I would recommend for each topic you have a motion so that there might be additional discussion on each one. So there would be for the breaking ties, the BRT maximum,
Well, okay, so let's,
and then the last one.
okay, so nobody's going to be against including a letter for the operator to maintain, snow removal from roads and all that. So that wouldn't be controversial. We already talked through the applying within different modes, so nothing to change there. The BRT, that one, I don't know that it would be controversial, Cole, from what I'm hearing, but why don't we just talk through the tie-breaking item here, and then maybe we can just do one full motion on all these just to save some time. So let's skip to breaking ties. Staff, was there anything else you wanted to add on that piece of it other than what you have in the report?
Well, yeah, the second bullet point there was what came up at tab yesterday. So that's not included in the as written. So if F&P is agreeable to it, that second bullet point, if two projects from the same applicant are tied in the same, that bullet point, that would need to be added to any motion if people would like to add that from the tab meeting yesterday.
Okay, and then I'm going to buy a lottery ticket after that if we approve this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'm actually looking at the language as tweaked in there. I think all we have in the track change language is a placeholder for tiebreakers. So we might need to include in the motion which one we want. So if you look at the action transmittal, which I'm fumbling around to find, we have these two options. So you could just make option one is the safety one that we've been talking about. It's a little more than just safety because they don't all have safety, but you could just make a motion to include option one as opposed to trying to spell this whole thing out.
Yeah, well, I think option one is what we've been talking about all the time with the kind of the safety focus.
Yeah, option two kind of came up at TAC and it was kind of carried through, and I think to clarify with option one in the motion would sort of set that up for TAC to not even have to worry about it. So that's just my advice, is like, if that's the direction that you're going to go, to make a motion for that option.
Okay. Any discussion from members on option one versus option two?
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Janoyak from Metro Transit.
Yeah, Scott.
Not to muddy the waters hearing people talk about option one, I'll just say from Metro Transit's perspective, in the spirit of the motion we did for the criteria and weighting, where we excluded, we recommended to exclude no additional points for transit projects. Similarly, I think we would prefer to go with option two here, knowing that there isn't a strong way to quantify a safety tiebreaker. So from our perspective, that option two would revert us to the tiebreaker being the highest point category, which for transit, I believe, is usage. So that's just our take from a tie-breaking perspective, trying to match the spirit of a previous motion that we did this meeting.
For what it's worth, what's lingering here for transit is kind of before we had the discussion, so it's actually the bike ped elements that would be the tiebreaker, at least as written here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Mr. Chair, based on the change we made earlier for safety, safety would be the number one category in all of the roadway categories anyways. So I think option two actually stays pretty consistent with option one in that sense.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I actually kind of disagree with that, because I think a lot of the talk yesterday was about how the criterion of safety was going to be the highest one in each scoring category, but we're using the word measure here. The measures do sort of, that didn't always break out that way. So I don't have it in front of me which is highest for each category, but I don't think it would always be safety with option two. I don't think. I'd have to look.
Okay.
I guess, yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't delineating between those two. I think it actually should be based on the highest rated criteria, not specific measure.
So discount the safety piece of it, Cole?
No, so I think what Joe's getting at is within safety, there's 3 measures sometimes, or 2 to 3 measures.
Okay.
What I'm saying is we should be weighting tiebreakers based on the highest rated category of measures, not any individual measure. So you'd be using usage in transit, safety in the roadway categories, except for bridges, which is infrastructure age, and then congestion reduction in TDM, safety and multi-use trails and ped facilities. Do you agree with that, Joe?
I don't have an opinion on that, but I would say that we would change the word measure there to equal criterion is what we would do.
That's what I was getting at when I brought this up. Yeah, sorry.
This is Scott from Metro Transit, and I would agree with that change in language.
All right. Any further discussion on any of these items?
Mr. Chair?
Angie.
Hi, Mr. Chair Committee, thank you. I did have one more comment. So it looks like we'll be requesting applicants to list out their eligible items to receive Protect funds. And I would think it'd also be helpful for applicants to list out any carbon reduction funding elements that would be eligible. Because just two different new funding sources. So that's something that caught my eye. I don't know that it's really pertinent to any of the, how things get scored or whatnot. But I thought to bring that up, because it was listed as part of this item. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Angie.
Mr. Chair, I think the difference between the CRP and the Protect in terms of like us asking folks to flag their elements is that the Protect has some very specific rules that probably would render no project eligible to take 100% of its funding from Protect, and I don't think that's the case for carbon reduction. Steve, correct me if you don't agree with that as our rationale.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Angie's bringing up a good point about some of these different funding sources, but Protect's the tricky one. Carbon, we can apply to a lot of different project types, including roundabouts, traffic management technologies, all transit projects, all bike bed projects, and it goes to the entire project. So that one's pretty easy for us to manage.
Oh, okay. So because there's more flexibility, there's not a need. Thanks for that clarification.
It's easy to do, yeah.
Okay, great.
I guess, Mr. Chair, I can make a motion to approve the action items with an increase to the BRT maximum to 39 million and a new tiebreaker rule that uses the highest value scoring criterion within each category to break any ties as the first option.
Okay, and staff, could you, on that second option, so the highest value scoring measure, so it's not in safety, it's just any measure within the entire application? Is that how I'm interpreting that?
Mr. Chair, as I understand Cole's point, we're actually going to change this word measure to criterion.
And maybe, Joe, it should be highest weighted scoring criteria. We're not talking about what the application actually scores. We're talking about the weight in the application of those measures.
Go ahead.
So if a project has a higher safety score, it would be given the tiebreaker over a project with a lower safety score in roadway projects.
Okay, but it doesn't say safety anywhere in here, so maybe we need to.
It's not specific to safety. It's specific to the highest. This is hard. Joe, you know what is there a document we can bring up that you could share? This is not clear, and I want to make sure it's clear to folks.
I'm pretty sure I see what you're saying is that at least in highways, so it would be the highest weighted option, the highest weighted of these criteria for each category. So for these highway ones, that always breaks out to be safety. Except for bridges, where it breaks out to be infrastructure.
The simple way to say this is in each category here, it's whatever the highest percentage criterion is would be the tie-breaking criterion. So it's not always safety. It's just the one that's the highest in each application category.
Okay, so for traffic management technology, spot mobility, strategic capacity, roadway, that's all safety. And then
infrastructure age for bridges, for example. So it's not the yellow. The yellow are the safety ones that are changing in theory, but
okay. And
so
then
usage and transit, etc.
Okay, that really clears it up for me, because safety is the top percent. So that I was just missing that link there. So okay, that makes sense.
So I think for the TAC and then for TAB, we should list out which those measures would be so that's clear, or criterion.
Yes, I think you should put a table together just to show which would be
We will do that for the action transmittal. I don't think we want it in the language, but we'll do it for the action transmittal.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So Cole, sorry, so that was your motion for the BRT for the 39 million, and then option 2, and I think you were still going on that motion.
No, I guess I don't remember, Joe, what the original. There were other suggestions you guys had. I think I would include those as proposed by staff. Those are just the 2 amendments to whatever the staff recommendations were.
I think the only one missing, because this bike ped elements one is already in there, so you'd be approving that with that included. So the only thing missing would either be if you're gonna change this rule about the 2 project elements at the bottom, and also this rule that was brought up at tab, this thing that was brought up at tab yesterday, that the applicant can pick if they have 2 tied projects in the same category, which is probably a rare occurrence, but right now that's not addressed in there. So I know it's messy, or you could leave it for TAC.
Yeah. So I guess, Mr. Chair, I would say I do think that second bullet on the tiebreakers would be a welcome addition. So if an applicant has 2 tied projects, I don't think that's ever happened in the history of the solicitation, but they could pick which project they want to fund.
Yep.
And then the last bullet, I think we all agreed there's no need to change that rule as stated. It's open to interpretation.
Okay, and then just Joe, just to clarify, the multi-use trails and bike facilities, the letter to remove snow don't we need an action? Aren't we adding something where we require that for roadways now, or am I missing?
So yes, so what we're saying in the request, the recommended motion is to adopt the attached policies. So that's already written in there. We did write a handful of things in there, and we're making such as like what year of transit data you're using and stuff like that. So we wrote that in there, but we did make a point to point it out just on the chance that it would be controversial. So you don't need to make a motion specific to that one, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay, so we have Cole's motion. Do we have a second?
Elaine Kutsukos will second.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Any further discussion?
Chair, this is Jason with Hennepin with a comment.
Yeah, Jason.
As we consider option 2 for breaking ties, I seem to remember us looking at the bridge category and noting that a lot of times the bridge age condition measure a lot of times has ties, since it's a very simplistic scoring methodology. So maybe as this moves forward through the approval process through TAC and TAB, maybe there's consideration made for the bridge tiebreaker, just recognizing that the highest or the measure with the highest number of points could be a tie within itself.
All right, thanks for that comment.
Would that mean, the option would be then, if that's tie, you go to the next second highest.
Seems logical to me. So, but we need to spell all this out in good detail before we let the solicitation. So, I'm sure staff I know that doesn't need to be in the motion specifically, but something to consider as we refine this preparing for the solicitation.
If we have 5 bridges and they tie, that's an oddity.
Yeah. Okay, any further discussion before we move to the vote? Okay, we will move to voting by roll call. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Nick Dobda.
Aye.
Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Gina Midico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAB Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Henniker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA Innocent AO,
Aye.
MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian Mackenzie Turner Bargan,
Aye.
Suburban Transit Heidi Scholl,
Aye.
Lakeville Paul Omi,
Aye.
Maple Grove Ken Ashfeld,
Aye.
Plymouth Michael Thompson,
Aye.
Minneapolis Katie White,
Aye.
St. Paul Ann Weber.
Aye.
That completes the roll.
All right, thank you, Bethany. That item passes, and we'll move on to measures and scoring criteria. Staff?
We're closer than you think. So this didn't come up at tab at all yesterday, basically because it's almost everything you see under here would fall into the, we're not messing with it until 2026. We do have a couple of tweaks that were based on some things that happened last year that we're calling out here, but you can make a motion just to accept it unless somebody doesn't like one of these. The transit ridership route coverage, you'll see a lot of shifts from 2019 to 2022 in there. This applies in the transit categories as well as the highway categories where you're talking about throughput. Clarifications that if you have a safe route school plan, it doesn't have to be MnDOT sponsored. And the reason that's in there is because last year, one of our applicants said, well, we have a safe route to school plan, but it didn't go through the MnDOT process. So we had to make a interpretation right then and there, and we clarified to keep consistent for this time around. And finally, and this has been talked about, Steve, you might expand on this, I don't know, but allowing bridge rehabilitation replacement projects to occur on collectors, minor collectors and above in the urban, and major collectors and above in the rural areas. And that's embedded into the language as well as some language on the previous item. And Steve, I don't know if you have anything to add, but otherwise we'd stand for questions there, but there are no major things happening.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any discussion from the committee?
I will clarify, I apologize. I was a little quick in my transit data. This means ridership data, and it also means not just ridership, but also route data, because sometimes you're talking about how many routes are connected. In both cases, we're looking at 2022 instead of 2019 as we're sort of getting back to normalcy in the transit world.
All right, thanks, Joe.
I apologize.
All right. Not seeing any discussion, maybe a motion.
This is
Mr.
Katie
Chair.
Minneapolis, move to approve.
All right, Katie from Minneapolis moves to approve. Do we have a second?
Dahlheimer from Washington County will second.
Second by Dahlheimer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County Nick Dobda,
Aye.
Carver County Angie Stenson,
Aye.
Dakota County Gina Medico,
Aye.
Hennepin County Jason Piper,
Aye.
Ramsey County Scott Merrick,
Aye.
Scott County Adam Jessen,
Aye.
Washington County Maddie Dahlheimer,
Aye.
Tab Coordinator Elaine Kotsukos,
Aye.
Met Council Cole Henniker,
Aye.
Metro Transit Scott Janowiak,
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District Aaron Tagg,
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid Colleen Brown,
Aye.
MPCA Innocent AO,
Aye.
MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian Mackenzie Turner Bargan,
Aye.
Suburban Transit Heidi Scholl,
Aye.
Lakeville Paul Omi,
Aye.
Maple Grove Ken Ashfeld,
Aye.
Plymouth Michael Thompson,
Aye.
Minneapolis Katie White,
Aye.
St. Paul Ann Weber.
Aye.
That completes the roll.
Great, thank you, Bethany. Next and final
And last,
is release of public comment.
is it adequate for me to say everything that you just approved, released for public comment, is what we want? A motion saying so.
Right, any discussion? See none, a motion?
Move to approve. This is Paul Lakeville.
Okay, Omi moves. Do we have a second?
Merrick, Ramsey County, seconds.
All right, thank you, Scott. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote by roll call. Bethany?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Nick Dobda.
Aye.
Carver County, Angie Stenson.
Aye.
Dakota County, Gina Midico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council, Cole Hinniker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent AO.
Aye.
MnDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian, Mackenzie Turner Bargan.
Aye.
Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis, Katie White.
Aye.
St. Paul, Ann Weber.
Aye.
That completes the roll.
Okay, great. Thank you. That item passes. We are officially done with business. So informational items. Joe, I know we are at about 3:15. I mean, I think if people, how quickly will these items be? Steve or Joe, any thoughts?
Yeah, we the second one, Minship, Brad Utek said we can send out an email with a survey that he encourages people to fill out.
Okay.
The first one, Adam Harrington, he did want just 1 minute of your time. Now, if he's still on there, if we lost him here, but
Adam, are you on?
yeah, he might have had to jump out, but what he had mentioned to me, they are doing a community engagement and summary of changes, and we can send something out on both of those, I guess, is what I'm alluding to here.
Okay, you can just send out the PowerPoint or email to the group as a follow-up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Just to clarify, they have a survey as well, so I think you'll be getting maybe a survey on both Minship and Metro Transit's process. So we can email both of those links out.
Okay. I'm disappointed Adam didn't stick around to listen to all of our business items. Okay, so that will be coming out separately after the meeting. Other business, do we have any other business items? No other business items. So I would move to adjournment here at 3:18. Thank you, everybody, for all of the thoughtful conversation today. Have a good one.
Thank you.